Solomon, who is in the operations unit of Providence Diamond Company. He also brought with him a senior who was in this class last year and did an internship last summer at Providence Diamond, is now there. Sarah Larkin, up. So some of you may have her in some of your classes, and she's doing kind of promotions and sales and things with the company at this point. She's been in some of their ads, if you've noticed them on TV. Okay, Brandon grew up in Southern California and came to New England to enjoy the wonderful winters we have here. And he did a marketing degree at Boston University. So in his junior year, he was already into business. He did some cigar lounges, kind of interesting, which he sold 4 years ago, and then started doing consulting at the same time, and did some consulting for Providence Diamond. Married into the family. I don't know what the order of those things were. So,
yeah,
anyway.
so thank you.
Anyway, we'll let him.
Thank you. So my name is Brandon Solomon. Thank you for having me here. And yeah, I've been married for it's going to be 14 years this year. So we were married, and I got married young, and my wife and I were doing our thing. And recently, their company is going through a generational shift where the first generation, their parents, want to go to warmer weather for obvious reasons, and the children, my wife and her brother, are there to run it. Their background is not in an operational sense. They're more involved in the buying and the diamonds and that part of the business. So my background lent itself to an operational, which is handling all aspects of the business and kind of controlling where it goes and making sure it goes there the right way. Previous to this, I had cigar lounges, and I was involved in higher-end luxury kind of lifestyles. So I was exposed to this luxury market there. But then coming into the jewelry industry, I've always been around my wife's business, and we've been in it. But now that I'm actually in it, my eyes were open to what a vast industry it is. It has many, many different levels and different facets to it, and what it encompasses is it's almost like a benchmark or watermark or barometer as to where a lot of the economy is right now in this country. And we've slipped away from an 80-20 rule, where 20% usually controls 80% of the wealth, to a 99-1%. And what we see in the luxury market is that luxury market is actually growing. And when you look at the research, you'll see that it's not growing so much because more people are spending more money. Wealthier people spending more money, they are, but a lot of people are spending more money on things that they perceive as having value, and branding is that value perception. And what we're going to talk about today is 2 specific brands that we work with and how they do that. So just so you know, this is our store. It's in Garden City Center in Cranston, Rhode Island. Do any of you know where it is, or have you seen it? Okay, all right. So just a really quick, brief history. It was founded in 1985. My father-in-law worked for a company called Fabricant, and what he did was he dealt diamonds. He was a diamond broker, and if you wanted a diamond for your wedding ring or something, you'd go to his office at the old Hospital Trust Building in Providence, and you'd meet with him and his wife, and they'd sell you a diamond. And that was kind of how a lot of things were done when there weren't bigger stores like there are now. He wanted to open a retail store at the age of 47, which is a big risk, which you'll all realize later. And and it was a big risk. He opened on Bald Hill Road, and then 2 years later he went to Garden City, where they are now. And one of the very important things that he did was he was able to get the Rolex name. And the Rolex name is extremely important in the jewelry industry, and I'll explain why that is. Today, this year we're nominated for Jeweler of the Year by JCK, which is it's a main industry publication in the jewelry world. We're a couture jeweler, and what this means is that there's only 150 jewelers in the country like this. They operate at a certain level and are invited to go to certain shows and buying shows, and we're actually paid to go to them. At these shows, you actually spend time with David Yurman, you spend time with these John Hards, you spend time with all these designers, and you build relationships with them, because at that level of branding, their brand, you represent their brand, and they want to make sure that the people representing are worthy to do it, so to speak. And when you get to this level, it's small enough distribution where you can still have those relationships. So we're the top growing David Yurman brand in the Northeast. It's the largest selection you'll see in the Northeast. And we've carried it for quite a long time since he started. We're the fastest growing jeweler for Rolex, and those are some of the names of companies that we have exclusives on within the state of Rhode Island. So one of the things that we try to do is when we bring a line in, we request it to be exclusive to us. Otherwise, we generally will not carry it, and that goes along with our branding as a store, because when you come to our store, we want you to think of exclusivity and exclusive brands you can't get anywhere else. If we don't have that, then our brand is diminished and deteriorates. So the luxury brand jewelry market, we're going to talk about these two brands specifically. These are both seven-figure lines for us in the store. Rolex itself is one of the top 100 brands in the world. Its net value of those 5 letters of Rolex are worth $7.7 billion. That's not the company, that's the letters. So it takes a second to really appreciate that and realize that those 5 letters that were invented in 1908 have a $7.8 billion price tag on it. David Yurman's now over $1 billion company. Less than 0.5% of jewelry stores in the U.S. market carry both David Yurman and Rolex like we do. So we're in a very elite group of retail stores. 10 years ago, there were 1,000 Rolex jewelers, and now there's only 400. They're going to make less. They're going to try to get to 250. They're doing this because they can't produce enough watches, and they want to control the distribution channels. So I'm going to talk about Rolex first, and then I'm going to talk about David Yurman. And I want to explain the concepts of Rolex and the concepts of what they do flow into other companies that are like them. David Yurman copies a lot of what Rolex does in this level because Rolex is one of the very best in the world at controlling their brand. And when I say that, I mean controlling your brand to the point of actually telling the people who sell your brand what to do and how to do it, even if it's going to cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars and they're not going to get anything in return, the people selling the brand will do it. And I'll explain what that means. So this is an interesting picture. You know what that is? You know what that's called? Remember? All right. This is, it's a quick test, but anyway. Rolex invents things. All right. A lot of people think of Rolex they've done this on purpose as an elitist brand, you know. And the reason they think of it like that is, and I'm going to show you why, is because of how they market themselves. But before they get to that level, before they market themselves and brand themselves and everything, and this is going to be true in David Yurman in any jewelry line, the purpose of something and what it's all about is what's most important. So Rolex does everything with a purpose first. And this picture is what's called chromolite. The blue that's glowing, a lot of you, your watches glow, right? And if you look at your watches, I mean, who have watches now, they glow, and it's generally a greenish blue color. The reason I'm showing you this is because you can see this is more blue. Rolex invented this because they don't want to be like everyone else. That's part of their branding. They want to be better than everyone else. So not different, they want to be better. And it's a very big distinction there. And what Rolex does is they say, well, everyone has what's called superluminova. That's what the green stuff that glows is. Every watch uses that. Rolex decided to hire their own chemists and make their own glowy stuff called chromolite. But being better isn't the purpose. The purpose is functionality. So this chromolite lasts 4 times longer than superluminova, so it lasts longer. It's brighter, and it's blue instead of greenish. And there's a reason for that, because the last color you see when you're diving in the water on the color spectrum is blue. There's a purpose for every part of that invention that goes down to the functionality of it. From that, they'll build the way the watch looks or have the actual style of the watch based around that purpose. So I just wanted to bring that up because you need to understand the philosophy of Rolex, which is purpose is first, branding comes second, but the branding is based on the purpose, which is having the best, being better than everyone else, and basically pushing the envelope, and you'll see that in a little while. So quick history, I'm just going to give you a quick history on Rolex so you understand the company that we're talking about. It was started in 1905 by Hans Wilsdorf. And this is important. This is branding. That name Rolex took 3 years to make. The name itself was very specific. He wanted 5 letters. He wanted it to have 2 syllables. He wanted it to be pronounced in every European language. It had to have an X in it. I can't remember the other things, but these are very, very specific criteria to create a word. The word means nothing, just so you know. Whatever you hear on the internet doesn't mean anything. He'll tell you, he told in an interview that a genie whispered it to him on a parade in London one day, and that's how he came up with it. So it was inspiration. But it was 3 years of inspiration of thinking about 5 letters and how to put them together the right way and what that would mean for your brand. In 1910, they did a swim across the, what is that? Sound. The English Channel. And a young lady did it in Mercedes to show that the watch could be waterproof. And in 1926, he actually did the very first waterproof watch. Just so you guys all know, Rolex is the only waterproof watch in the world. A lot of people don't know that by the FTC. It's the only one in the whole world. In 1931, they made this sort of self-winding, so you don't need a battery, or you don't need to wind it. In 1945, he put a date on the watch. 1947, it was with Chuck Yeager when he broke the sound barrier. In 1956, they put a day and a date. In 1959, they went to the Tristis dive, which is, I don't think I spelled that right, which was the Mariana Trench, which James Cameron just went to recently. The point of showing you all this is that Rolex continuously makes one product and continuously improves it to be above everyone else in their industry or in their marketplace. And they do it in a way that is beyond what normal people do, which is they just extend the way they test things further than they need to. So as an example, just a last example of the watch, they make a watch called the Sea Dweller. It goes down 12,800 feet. I asked them one day, why that depth? Weird. 97% of the Earth's ocean floor is that depth. So no one can beat them. That's their whole point. And it's a not-for-profit, believe it or not. It's run by 12 people out of Switzerland, and it's a not-for-profit company. All their money goes to orphanages and watchmaking schools. Now I'm going to show you, based on all of this technology and all the things that they put, so whenever you see a watch have a date on it, or whenever you see a watch have like glowing stuff, whenever you see a watch have a sapphire crystal, these are all Rolex inventions. So Rolex has earned its place in the watch industry where it is. But the branding is what brings it to another level. And so what Rolex does is a really neat trick. And I've analyzed it on my own. I haven't read this. This is my own analyzation, so you can take it for what it's worth. Rolex becomes an authority in the industry that they're in. And I'm going to show you an example of that. And then they align themselves with the winners of the authority that they're in. So here's all the right circles that Rolex is in. They're in all the money circles that cost a lot to play. It costs a lot to ride horses and buy horses. It costs a lot to buy a boat and go sailing, and skiing, and tennis, and race cars, and exploring. These are all things that they know that's their market. They're specifically targeted into those markets. And what they end up doing is they become ingrained in those events. They become synonymous. So you always see Rolex at Wimbledon. You know, you always see Rolex at golf. You always see Rolex with equestrian. They're always together. And the people they endorse aren't just people. I'm going to tell you a little secret now. So the golf people, all right, or any of the people they do, Federer or Tiger Woods or any of these people. So we were with the president of Rolex this past summer, and we were talking to him. We were with the head marketing person, and we were in Newport. They have a regatta every year. And they said, I'm like, I just am curious, can I ask what you pay your golfers? Like, because Rory McIlroy got $3 million from Omega. He goes, yeah, we don't pay them. I go, what? All right. So he goes, let me explain how it works. First of all, we qualify them. That could take several years. We go to dinner with them, their significant others, their family, their friends, and we see if they are an appropriate fit for our brand as an ambassador. Then once we think they're good, we approach them with a contract, and we give them a watch allowance every year, depending on their skill set. So it could be someone coming out of college, it could be someone like a Tiger Woods. When they win, or they do well, what we do is we write about them and publicize them. Our publications of them increase their value as a product, and they're able to negotiate with their other vendors like Nike and so forth a lot more substantially than if we actually paid them. It's a very, very powerful tool. It's a sophisticated tool that Rolex is using. So all the people that you ever see in Rolex ads are generally not paid. They do it because they're with the brand and they're tied to the brand the same way the brand ties itself to the industry it's in. So the other thing that's really interesting is they sign on for life. So they can't go with any other watch company ever again. So after the boat racers are running around Newport and they see all the buoys with Rolex and they see all the Rolex flags and they do all that, guess what the winner gets? A Rolex. So you need to look at this as a really big idea of marketing. Rolex becomes an industry, an official timepiece. They're not a sponsor. They're an authority in the industry. They're official timekeepers. And then what do the winners get? They get a Rolex. So Rolex is automatically assigned with authority and the winner of that event, which is what most people want to be around. It's a, like I said, sophisticated look at things. The Swiss are very, very good at that. If you watch auto race, if you watch Formula One, next time it's on, just watch it. And when you see first place come on, watch how it happens. First place, second place, they'll all come on. And after they show the names, right after, a Rolex symbol will come next to the first place name. Like for no reason, except to tell you that Rolex is first. So this is one of the ways that Rolex is in the luxury market, keeps itself in the luxury market, builds relationships in the luxury market, and becomes almost an authority in the luxury market. They don't pay to be in any advertisements. They don't pay to be in any movies. They don't pay to be in any songs. And it's important to note, just as a company, Rolex is vertically integrated. Does anyone know what that means? Well, they make all their own things. And the equivalent of that is if FedEx was vertically integrated, they would make all their own tires, they would make all their own cars, they would have their own metal factory, their own steel factory, they would have their own petroleum plant to do everything for them. Rolex, every part of a Rolex watch is made in Switzerland by Rolex, for Rolex. All their marketing material is done for them, by them, and no one else gets Rolex parts or anything. It's a very powerful company, and I'm going to share with you just I'm not going to use names here, but locally, we have a very, very large jewelry store that a lot of people know. And it was in the mall, the Providence Place Mall. And what happened is Rolex said, we don't want to be associated with your store anymore because it's a discount store. It has catalogs and it goes out, and we don't want to be associated with that. So you can either change the name of your store or just don't sell our product anymore. And this store changed 14 of their stores up and down the East Coast to keep that brand. And I just really think about if a pizza place, all of a sudden, the guy making the sauce says, I don't like the way your store is, I want you to change the name and branding of it, or I'm not going to sell you sauce anymore. It's ludicrous when you think about it, but the power of this brand is enormous. And the way that they do it, and I've only touched on a few ways that they do it, is powerful but what's most important and what you should learn from this is the way they do it is in detail. Excellence in detail is the secret here. So when you execute something, you need to look at every single detail. Everything. And that's what we're talking about next. So, do you guys have any questions? Because I'm going to go on to Rolex.
I have a question about counterfeiting.
Great.
How does Rolex control that?
Yep. Rolex, I kind of feel they're involved in it, but I feel like they're involved in it because they're smart enough to know that they can't control it if they're not involved in it. But that's not official or anything, so don't take that for anything. But what they do is they work very heavily with the FBI. I'll tell you a couple other things which are really interesting. They have raids in New York on Canal Street a ton, where they go in and they will arrest people and file full charges. They use the law to their extent. They do it in China, they do it in Russia, they do it all over. They have a whole task force designed for this. And like I said, they work very, very, very close with the FBI. We just had a case recently where, not counterfeiting, but what happened is these people were going around and using fake names to get credit at a store, like a GE credit or something. You apply for credit at a store, and then they would buy a Rolex. And then the credit would be wrong, and we were out of watch and all that. Well, they caught the guys down south, and they had done it a ton. When we were on the boat with the president of Rolex, he told us this, and I'm going to just tell you that. What ended up happening was the FBI gave them information explaining that a lot of those were actually, those people doing that had debts to casinos. Casinos were supplying them with that fake ID info, telling them what to do to go buy Rolexes, and then bringing them back to the casinos. It's a very, very dirty story, and I don't know if it's true or anything, but it seemed pretty interesting. My point is that Rolex is a very powerful company, work very tight with these people to try and prohibit counterfeiting, but they have a Supreme Court case which says that if any part of a Rolex, a gear, anything is changed, it is considered counterfeit, and they will not work on it unless it's put back together the way it should be. So if any of you buy one pre-owned, just realize that there could be something wrong with it. But that's a Supreme Court case. It's considered counterfeit. So if someone sells you a Rolex and it does have a fake part on it, they've actually committed a fraud. Rolex will actually back you and sue them. So they're very much into it, but it's a very tough game. Some of them are really hard to see, hard to do it. But you have a question?
Yeah, no, you can
No,
continue.
go ahead.
I was just asking, so you don't sell it all discounted or anything like that?
No.
What do you do if...
This is a great question. Discounts. Okay, so in our contract, we are not legally you cannot control pricing in this country. But Rolex's contract says that they can close our account for any reason they want without disclosing that reason to us. So we could be discounting and they can close us for that, and that's the reason. But it's very touchy. You see, with pricing, you want, if the reason there's fewer and fewer vendors is, like I was saying, they can control distribution. It goes back to this relationships. It's back to relationships where you have a trust built with the vendors. Rolex doesn't have any of their own stores. They rely on the vendors. They rely on the retailers. There's a trust built there. So if you are discounting, they'll shut you down, which happened in Barrington to a store there. And not only that, they buy back all the merchandise at retail right on the spot, so you can't discount it. They have the right to do that. But to discount, so if I have a friend or it's a good friend and stuff, I'm going to give them a good price. Rolex actually is a low profit margin, so you can't do too well on it. But if it's a friend, I can do that. But if it's someone new, or even it's a friend who I've given a discount to, you never want to say you've ever gotten that or anything, because what ends up happening is you devalue what you just bought. So it's really an education when people come in and say, oh, what can you do? Can you do a discount? And we have to educate them and say there's no discount. And if you go somewhere else, there'll be no discount. Because you should feel confident you're going to pay the same as everyone else. You don't want to feel like you paid more or less. You paid what everyone else paid. And that value, just in Rolex, only goes up. It only goes up. Does that answer?
Oh yeah, that was good. Thank you.
I have one question. So on that, does that mean like you could have a watch in the store for say maybe 2 years and it doesn't go on sale at all? It goes up in price?
Yeah, which means our profit goes up. it won't stay in the store 2 years. But your point is well taken, because it doesn't. No, you don't change anything. You don't change anything because you discount. You're discounting what you're selling. You're discounting your store's name. It's a whole trickle-down effect, and it's kind of hard for people to understand that, and that's why it's really the top echelon that understand these brands. A lot of wealthier people buy these brands because they know. Let me ask you, who in this room owns a Chanel bag? Good for you. All right? I just bought my wife one, and I don't like to spend a lot of money on things. But let me tell you, that bag will go up in value. It's an investment. She'll have it for years and years and years and years, and she'll get, I like to use the term cost per wear, so she'll get a lot of cost per wear out of it. And it's an investment in the money. What I paid for it in 10 years, I know I'll get for it. So being able to spend money like that is a privilege. If you have that ability, spending it right, it takes some education. And a brand like Rolex, and then when we go into a brand like David Yurman, you're protected with what you spend. We have people bought David Yurman 10 years ago and then sold it 10 years later and made money on it. Same with Rolex. Those are great brands. There's not a lot of brands like that, and that's why those brands are more expensive. That's why you pay more for silver jewelry from David Yurman, where this ring, this has black diamond, it's $15.50 retail. Realistically, with parts and everything like this, it's probably like a $200 or $300 ring. But the branding is what makes it so expensive, and the branding is what will keep the price forever. Whenever you sell jewelry just in the future, you're selling three things. You're selling the stones, or the gems, you're selling the metal, and the craftsmanship. Craftsmanship is always lost because when someone buys it, they don't care about that. That craftsmanship is for you. But if the craftsmanship is tied to a brand, like Cartier or Tiffany or something, that completes it so that you don't lose the value. So, sometimes part of you is like, I don't like brand names and being like that brand name person. And in mainstream brand names, that's understandable. But when you get to this higher end of luxury brand names, they're really investments, and you need to look at them in that respect. Okay, so here's David Yurman. Yes, of course.
Like, I go to Providence Diamond all the time. I buy, I
Oh,
love
yes.
Providence Diamond, but I don't understand, like, Rolex has such, like, let's be realistic. What percent of Rhode Islanders can afford a Rolex? Like, really? Like, why? No, I know, but like, you know what I mean? We're not in, like, Southern California.
That's right, yeah.
So, if the profit margin is so low, why sell it?
It's volume. We have high volume off it.
Do
So
you
it's
guys
actually,
ship out?
so it's our lowest profit margin. It's our highest profit center. We don't ship out. You know what? Just another thing. Little rules. If I called up New York and said, "Hey, I want to buy a black Submariner," you have one? Yeah, $8,500. Sure, ship it to me. They won't. You have to go in. You have to go into the store. They will not just ship it to you. We've had people come from New York. "Hey, I want this. Do you have it?" Sure. He goes, "Look at my LinkedIn. Look at my Facebook." We're like, "No, you have to come in." So at this level of retail, we don't have to make a sale. No one in Providence Diamond works on commissions. We don't have to make sales. We're there to service, because if the luxury market is about service and clienteling and relationships, we don't have to sell things in there. We really have to educate people, because at that level, when you're buying things, and Sarah even says, you get a little jaded when you're like, "Oh, it's only $800. Oh, that watch it's only $6,000. We get jaded by that. So we're there to really talk to people and say, "Hey, this is a big purchase for you. Is it the right one? If it's not, don't make it right now. But if it is, we want to be a part of that relationship and be the one that helped advise you." Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. So David Yurman was a sculptor. I don't know if you guys know that. That was his background and profession. He was a sculptor. He was an artist living in Greenwich Village, and he and his wife was a painter. He made a necklace for his wife at an art show, and someone noticed it, and they sold 3 of them that week. And he basically said to himself, "This is a lot easier than sculpting." Like literally. His wife was the one that actually came up with the cable design that he's known for. He wanted to use something, I can't remember the material, but she's the one who said using silver. He was the first to set diamonds and silver jewelry, and a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of these people were first to do things. in his fashion industries, like Ralph Lauren and so forth. He was the first to do that, and a lot of people laughed at him because back then, silver was really an industrial tool. It wasn't used for jewelry, or else it was used for cheap jewelry. Gold was really what was used, or platinum, and he was really laughed at more than anything. Well, he's now the top U.S. jewelry brand. He's the top online jewelry brand as of this year, and he has over $1 billion in sales. So, really interesting, and a lovely guy. When we go to the shows, he sometimes just sits outside his booth, and the booth is like a hotel suite, like a big huge room. He sits outside just reading the paper, and a lot of people don't know what he looks like, so they just kind of walk by, and you're just like there, sitting there right there. These people are they're going to do the same thing that Rolex does, so I'm just going to talk about, Rolex does the same things that they do, or I should say they do the same things Rolex does. But it's easier for me to show you in their world what they do. So if you see the design and function and form of the actual jewelry, now we're going into attention to detail. When David's doing his designs, he's looking at how it feels, how it forms, how it looks, how it's going to sit, how it's going to, all these different things. He also has to include costs. Am I going to use 14 or 18 karat gold? Am I going to use this much? Am I going to use a thinner piece or more? How's it going to affect the cost? All these different things are going to come to the actual piece of jewelry. And that's just a little piece. Then, after the construction and finish all that, now we're going to package it. How are we going to package it? Are we going to use those boxes? Are we going to use, are we going to use pouches like this? How are the pouches going to feel? Are the ropes going to be soft or are they going to be hard? How long are the ropes going to be? Is there going to be a divider in the middle of it? Is it going to be this? Detail is what makes a brand strong. If you think about all those little things as insignificant as you think they are and don't take them for granted, the person who receives them will appreciate it subconsciously. I think that's a fact. John Hardy, this is their packaging. John Hardy believed something kind of interesting. He believed that the jewelry itself, the people who worked on it, had to have some sort of piece of it because it reverberated with his designs. All these artists are real artists. But this whole thing in John Hardy, they have a cloth, and of course they're looking at their color scheme, and they're looking at this little thing that tells how they plant bamboo and save the Balinese rainforests. A brand forms by creating a story, and a story comes from all of these details that form the brand. So the distribution channels and the partners are the stores, the independents and the nationals, the Saks and the Neiman's and the Bloomingdale's, and then stores like Providence Diamond and stuff like that. Pricing and availability is controlled, and it's checked on regularly, where we have to submit our reports to them every single month and show them what we sold, and then they base that on our actual invoices to see if we're actually selling things retail, and that's what they do. Traditional social and online media is extremely controlled by David Yurman. They know that 70% of the population online is female, specifically Facebook and Instagram. They know what people do on it. They watch it. And as an example, I was at Yurman's office last year, and we were looking at new stuff, and I took a picture, and I said, I'm at Facebook, and within 5 minutes, I got a phone call from my rep, who was sitting in the room across from me. I'm like, hello. She's like, take it off Facebook now. Like, they knew that I had put something on Facebook, like within 5 minutes. So I'm going to show you, It's just, they're monitoring it extremely, and I mean, Sarah could tell you she does a lot with that. Third-party endorsements and events. So who was their last model? No, Kate Moss is their current model. But who was the last one who was in the Sports Illustrated last? Yes, Kate Upton. They pay top dollar. They pay for the top model. Again, this is another detail. Everything's a detail. So they won't just hire any model. They hire the top model. They, again, are doing what Rolex does and associating their industry world, which is fashion and jewelry, with the top model in that industry. So they follow exactly what Rolex does, but in a very different way. The charities and PR and social status and stuff, the awards that they do, are all geared towards their brand. On the right, you see that these are all displays over here. One of the major things Sarah does in the store is merchandising. And David Yurman sends us, what's it called? a directive, a merchandising directive. It's this thick, and all it tells you is how to put things out in the case. And there's a whole science to it, and it's all about triangles and depth perception and shapes and how things go together and color collections, and it's a very in-depth, detail-oriented process that I could never do, and I have huge respect for Sarah when I see her doing it, because she's sitting there just putting things in, and it's important because it's another representation of the brand. It's the first impact someone sees your jewelry, and they take it very, very seriously. So all of these details go into how a brand forms. You guys have questions?
How do you handle situations where like something is extremely similar but is a different brand? Like I know I work at TJ Maxx in the jewelry department, and we get things in all the time that look like David Yurman, but
You sue
they're
them.
just and they're these famous brands like I can't.
Oh yeah.
For some reason I'm blanking.
No, I understand. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
They sue them.
They do.
Yeah, they sue them. So what ends up happening is,
Like how do they differ? Whether it's exactly the same or just a style?
yeah. So what happens is there's patents on them. So they have patents on those coils. There's a patent to make it. This is a physical piece of. This is physical metal that's been twisted. It's not just like a carved ring. That is actually a patent that he has on that, and he tries to patent other things. There's certain things that you can't do, and you can't go after people, and it's not worth going after people, but they just had a huge lawsuit, I think with Sam's Club, who went in and purchased from a third-party vendor, trans-shipped a bunch of real Yurman, and Sam's Club put it out and then discounted it. And Yurman sued Sam's Club and won, and got all their merchandise back, because that affects their brand. So, I gotta put this the right way. Unfortunately, you can sue anyone for anything, and a lot of companies use that to their advantage these days. Companies like Nestle, for example, who sue towns in Maine because they won't let them pump water. And the town can't afford to fight the lawsuits, so they have to let Poland Spring pump water. So those are bad lawsuits, but the good part about these lawsuits is they can go after these smaller people who are counterfeiting and stuff and do that to them, because David Yurman is at the level where they can afford to push that kind of legal power. So they pick and choose their battles, but they generally are going to choose the battles that they feel are going to affect their brand the most. So someone's just copying their stuff and they're like, that's not going to affect us. In fact, that helps us because it separates us more. They really look at that in that way to see how it affects the brand more than if it irritates their sales. It's the branding more than sales. Brand is more important than sales. Brand is what's going to last longer. On our website, I wanted to show you, this is all we can put on our website. That's it. Nothing else.
I was
That's it.
gonna say, I went on before class and you can't,
That's it.
yeah,
That's it.
no pricing or anything.
That's it. Neiman Marcus is the only one that can sell, and that's their retail partner. That's basically testing all their online. So if they ever want to do that, they'll bring it to us as a partner, and they'll set it up for us. I guarantee we'll have no part of that, because again, it's control of distribution. The fewer people touching the end result, the better for them, because they're able to control it. So Kate Moss, just she was 10 years ago their model. She's now their model again. This is a family-run company. The son, Evan, and the father both do the designing, and Sybil does all the other stuff, which is the merchandising. Kate is an extremely good friend of the Urbans. When she was going through, she had some drug problems in England. They're the ones that flew a jet to her to get her. They're extremely close. She's part of their family. And it's just nice to know that a big company like this is still like family-based, like Hermes. So you don't have to read all this, but this is just an outlook for all, like when we get our media plan from Yurman, these are some of the things they say. You can't sell online. Look how they rate it. Any selling should be encouraged in the store visits. Positioning. So if you ever see Rhode Island Monthly, we pay a premium for page 3. So we pay for that. We own that page. So page 3 is always owned by us. This month or last month it was Rolex. But specifically, and I put this in there, you notice there's no ads here. you cannot put a Rolex, this is where Yerman follows Rolex. You can't put a Yerman or Rolex ad if there's any other ads. So Rhode Island Monthly, on many occasions, has to move their editorials in a certain way so that there's nothing here, just for us. Or really just for Rolex here. But these are the specifics, again, the details of creating a brand. Every aspect. When we were at a Rolex event this summer and they were doing those awards after that yacht racing, the lady who put it all together, we were sitting with her and she like gets up in the middle and like runs over and moves this like Rolex like banner because it wasn't at the right camera angle for what they were doing and shooting. Everything has a purpose and a deal with these two companies, and it goes all the way down to the way newspaper ads are. Rolex, for example, if you wanted to do online advertising with Rolex, you have a co-op you can do, they split the cost with you. Nothing on the web page can say anything else but Rolex, no other ads. You have to buy the whole page, everything. So if you go onto Forbes or you go on things, you see a Rolex ad, you'll notice on the page there's nothing but Rolex, it's only Rolex. They don't share with anyone. This is the kind of mentality that building a brand, you have to be very, very strong and very steadfast in how you build it. You can't divert from your course. So you can't use third-party properties such as videos when referring to David Yerman or content. So if we took a video from NBC that showed Yerman and put it on our site, Yerman would then call us and say, please take it off. Even though it's our site, it's totally different content, has nothing to do with anything, but it had Yerman in it, we have to take it off. And that's how controlling they are.
Now, can we put this up on YouTube?
Yeah, this is fun.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll take calls.
if I do, then whatever. So I just put luxury as the great state of great comfort and extravagant living. So I'm going to show you a couple things real quick. A couple quick things. All right, this is Evan Yerman. This is David Yerman's son. He started the men's line, and just a credit to him, really cool guy. I think he's 30. Grew up in this business, pretty much has it made, can do whatever he wants. Private jets, you got it. And he decided that he wanted to attack the men's line about 6-7 years ago, and it now ends up, it's about 20% of their business, which is huge in the jewelry world. It was his vision that did it, and luckily he has his father's eye for design, and he's doing great. But this is him, and this is about the men's collection. I want you to look at this video, because this isn't a video that's a commercial. This is just really for industry. It's really for people in-house. It's to show people. It's not something the public's really going to go and see. So check it out.
The beauty of jewelry is that it's not disposable. I have jewelry that's thousands of years old. They can be heirlooms. They can go on forever.
That's meteorite.
In designing jewelry, I felt that it was important to express the root of where that concept came from. That's why I took on the name Numenon for my design studio. Numenon was a term that described the original root of something. A lot of the pieces that I'm inspired by, there is a natural art to that piece, something that nobody had control over. I'm framing the objects with my jewelry. I am a firm believer that the most simple designs are the best ones. When I first came up with the meteorite concept, I was very much intrigued by the idea of space. It's probably one of the largest unknowns. It's as if we've gone to a beach and just put our toes on the shore. You're really kind of forbidden to own things from space. Meteorite was something that I thought was attainable, it was beautiful. That extraterrestrial crystal structure of the metal, billions and billions of years old. I wanted the design aesthetic to reflect light and space and matter. It It was an aesthetic decision, it was a philosophical decision. This was like a token for me to remember that I am just human, and that life is not everlasting. Metal is everlasting. Jewelry itself is timeless.
It's cool, huh? You like that?
Yeah.
Cool. So again, the detail that went into making that for absolutely no reason but to make it is really amazing on how, again, it's just building the brand, building it. This is building the brand internally. This is building it with your retailers. This is things. And then we share this with customers. Now, just on the flip side, I want to show you his father. And this is a very beautiful video. And this was his Starburst collection. And it really, it's very beautiful.
Jewelry is an illusion, actually. You think you're getting gold. But that's not what you're really getting. What you do when you make jewelry is you make a feeling. Starburst definitely was a leap of faith. It was really to recreate what you feel when you see fireworks, when you see a shooting star. You remember when you see a shooting star, it's like, oh my God. Being in someone's backyard and watching fireworks, those things don't leave your mind. Bagpipes and fireworks, the things that get so really emotional. Starburst comes out of Sylvania. We're in Paris, so we go on the balcony at night, you see the whole city. White sparkles everywhere. And they really go to town on the Eiffel Tower. Color and fireworks, and us being there became romantic. It was complete collaboration. So I started playing around with what would the Starburst mean for me. That's the thing about drawing. You just want to put the pen to paper. Who's going to appear at this one? Who's showing up? So, God, I don't know how we're going to translate that into a material object. You can design all you want on paper, but it doesn't come to be until you take it to the material state. I look at jewelry as a piece of art. It's sculpture, it's form, it's shape, it's balance. Then I say, okay, now, is this going to function right? It's got to feel pleasing to me. With things like Mother's Day, there's lots of ways to show love. When Sybil asks, I would love to see like a starburst. I said, okay, I can do that. So that's the present. And the real present is because Sybil's an artist. She said, oh, I want to play too. And then we were playing in the sandbox together. There's so many starbursts in the world. This is ours.
Pretty, huh? It's a pretty video. That signature at the end was new. That was a couple years ago. He just started doing that. It's another form of branding that he's doing because he's going to separate his jewelry from his son's. So this is a bunch of planning again that goes into it. I just want to show one last video, and it's a Rolex one. And again, these are just a minute or so, but I want to show it to you because this completely explains what Rolex is about. You may have seen this commercial or not, but it's exactly what Rolex is about, and it's done very well.
Look in all the dictionaries. There is no word for what we do. It's not tradition, though our craft is timeless. Limitless is too limiting. Enduring is not enduring enough. Innovation can only begin to describe it. We sculpt, paint, and explore. But explorers, sculptors, and painters, we are not. This is the only thing we make, the only thing we will ever make. There is no word for what we do. There is only a way, the Rolex way.
So you can see the differences in the branding and the similarities of excellence and how they, I just want to touch on one quick thing. What's that? So just one quick thing on Yerman's marketing and what they did that was different, because I didn't touch on it before, is what they did about the branding is they did something different than any other jewelry company in the world. And they started focusing on the lifestyle. So when you see a picture of Kate Moss or you see any of these ads and they're in black and white, a lot of the jewelry is in color. And people, again, were looking at David Yerman. The ad agency was called David Lippman. He did Burberry as well. And really revamped them. And it was about the lifestyle. It was about being part of that lifestyle. And the jewelry almost became secondary, but the lifestyle couldn't exist without the jewelry. So it was a very unique way of advertising. He's continued it to this day, and that's why you'll see tons of his ads in black and white. And it was just it's just a way that it wasn't about product anymore. And that's, again, what defines luxury. Luxury is not about product, it's about lifestyle. So if you guys have any other questions while I'm here.
How many stores in this area sell Rolex?
Just two. And hopefully we'll get you one. But just two right now. Yeah. And so remember earlier I was like, Rolex tells you have to do certain things. So one of the things they asked us to do, told us to do, is we have to build a room, and this goes with their branding, and it's about a 100 square foot room that costs $100,000 to build. It's literally like this big. And it's covered in leather and marble and everything, and we have to pay for it. Rolex requests that we do it because it is another representation of their brand at the point of sale. So it's a closing room. Cartier, just so you know, for accounts they're opening, they're requesting the exact same thing. It's a trend in luxury retailing, which is closing rooms or areas that you can sit and discuss things as opposed to like a counter. It's another trend in detailing. So, and that's something that Rolex is not asking us, they're telling us, go spend the money and do that. And I got a call today from the rep saying, I'm going to Switzerland in a week, we're going to meet with Rolex. Okay, really quick. I'm going to Switzerland in like 3 weeks for Basel, which is the watch show. Rolex's booth in that show is $3 million, has 152 rooms and an elevator. It's open 10 days of the year and that's it. And it's the only show that Rolex goes to. And it again shows you what they spend their money on, how they do it. It's really crazy. But at that show, the rep called and he goes, we don't want to have the closing room as our discussion while we're there. And I'm like, all right, so can we just get a contract in place to have it done so that we can talk about other things? Like that's what your vendor is saying to you. It's a very interesting relationship, but powerful and respected company. So, any questions?
Have they branded the colors? Like the green, yeah, that's all.
There's a Rolex green and a Rolex yellow. Yeah, they own them. Yeah, they own it. They own their own gold foundry. The only thing that Rolex buys is steel and platinum. Everything else they make and manufacture themselves, including the diamond lines, except for the crocodile straps. They do not have crocodile. More? Ask anything you like. Because we'll have a few questions for you. We have a couple prizes to give some But we do it, these, okay, so we have some David Yerman jewelry pouches that we're going to give to people to travel. So we have 5 of those. And then before we do that, do you want to come up and say what we're going to do?
Yeah, so we're doing this Instagram giveaway. So all you have to do is follow us on Instagram, and we have a picture on our account right now.
You just have to regram it on yours and then say hashtag Prov Diamond prize, and you'll be entered into winning something that will be between either $50 to $500, and we're going to do it every month. So yeah, we're going to have, depending on how many people do it, we'll have either multiple winners or just one. So the more people who do it, the more winners there will be.
Yeah, so go on and, Instagram's cool, we put some really neat stuff up there.
Our Instagram is just Providence Diamond.
Yeah, and it's, yeah, it's fun, Instagram's fun, but it's, I'm gonna leave these up here too, if you guys wanna look through them. It's just really neat to see what Rolex puts into publications. I mean, they give these away, these aren't like books you buy, but they feel like they are. So you should see it, it's amazing. And I have some other things I'll leave up here. So, do you want me to ask questions? Do you want to ask questions? Okay.